If only Adam and Eve had been as swift to reject Satan as Jesus' own relatives were in the gospel to accuse him of being Satan. Today we go all the way back to the dawn of time, the beginning of creation, Genesis chapter 3. Adam and Eve had the world on a platter. God made them in his image and likeness. They were like God, never going to get sick, never to grow old. They were never going to die. Adam would never have to work a day in his life. The whole world was his to do with as he pleases, as long as he didn't break the one rule God set for Adam and Eve in that garden: stay away from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. All seemed well until the serpent came by and told them, God is lying to you. He's keeping secrets from you. You need to eat the fruit of that tree so you will find out these secrets, and then you will be like God. They already were. This is why the devil is the prince of lies. He cannot deliver on his promises. It's a trail of tears and broken promises where he tries to convince us that things that are hurting us will actually make us happy. Adam and Eve fell for it. They did eat from the fruit of that tree. And instead of becoming like God, as Satan promised, they lost, marred, disfigured, and scarred that image and likeness. So much so that now they're running from God, hiding from God, where being in his image and likeness made nakedness beautiful. Now it is shameful, and they're looking for leaves to cover themselves. But since God is everywhere and God knows everything, Adam and Eve cannot hide. He already knows what they did and why they did it. But he comes to see them in the garden to give them an opportunity to take responsibility for what they've done, to admit why they did it, and perhaps even to say, God, I'm sorry. And so God happens upon Adam. Adam, why did you eat the fruit of that tree? She made me do it. How quick he is to throw Eve under the bus. But then she does know better. When God asked her the same question, she said, the serpent made me do it, the devil made me do it. With the first sin, original sin, come the first excuses. And people have been blaming others for their own mistakes, faults, and failings ever since. We call it rationalizing one's behavior. It's not really wrong. It's really somebody else's fault. And then the consequences come. They're stiff and dire consequences for Adam and for Eve. He is told that he's going to have to work to put food on the table, where up until now, everything was given to him for nothing. Eve was told she was going to bear pain in childbirth. Both of them were informed by God. They have to leave the garden, and their lives are going to be shortened. They are going to die. Some people think, well, that's pretty harsh. For a loving God who loves his creation, why wouldn't he give them another chance? Well, he plans to in the long run. As we shall soon see, getting them out of that garden and shortening their lives was not God's anger. It was God's severe mercy. So great was his love for them, he wanted to protect them from themselves, from that serpent, and from their temptations. By getting them out of that garden, God was getting Adam and Eve away from that temptation which would plague them for the rest of their lives. And by shortening their life, God was making sure they wouldn't be tormented for all eternity with the very thing that they would, shouldn't, and not have. God was already planning at that moment. A chain of emotion and different events was going to occur that was going to bring about a new Adam, born of a new Eve, Jesus born of Mary, where sin began at the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. One day it was going to be conquered overwhelmingly on the tree of the cross. Then and only then, and through him, would Adam and Eve have a chance to pass heaven's gate. And that would be something worth waiting for. And that hope of a Messiah, the Christ, the anointed one, that provided a light in the darkest times of the history of God's chosen people. And over the centuries, expectations began to build. When would the Messiah come? Where would he come from? And what would he do when he came? How will we know him? So many prophets prepared the way for the coming of the Lord. And when he came, there were plenty of people that said, he is the one, he is the Christ. But there were plenty of others that said, no, not him, we're going to wait for another. And Jesus experienced that tension all throughout his life on earth, including and especially in the middle of the 3rd chapter of Mark's gospel that we hear today. Mark doesn't talk about Jesus' birth. His is the shortest gospel, so he has to hit the ground running. At the beginning of Mark, Jesus is already 30 years old. He is baptized. He goes and spends his 40 days in the desert, and then he begins his ministry. And already here by chapter 3, he has called the 12 apostles. He has cast out demons. He has cleansed lepers. He has cured every kind of illness and disease, and news of him is spreading all throughout the lands of Judah and Israel. Now he's come home. He's come home to see the people that knew him from the time he was a little one. As far as they knew, he was just the son of Joseph and Mary. They're finding it hard to believe that he's actually the Son of God. But Jesus, he knew he would be rejected because every prophet that prepared the way for the coming of the Lord, they were rejected, they were ridiculed, many were beaten and killed. He expected no better reaction to his ministry than theirs. And now that he has come, not only do the people of his town reject him, his own blood relations, aunts, uncles, cousins, they don't just reject him, they seize him and accuse him of being Satan. In Luke's account, when Jesus first came home, there wasn't a parade waiting for him. Instead, they threw him out of the synagogue, and then they wanted to throw him off a cliff. They wanted to murder him rather than dare believe that he, whom they've known from a little one, was the Son of God instead of the son of Joseph and Mary. For him, it's both and, not either or. For them, it was one or the other, and they couldn't believe that he is the living God. Here, where they accuse him of being Satan, they said he's doing the works of the devil. They said he's doing the works of Beelzebul. And that was a particularly heinous insult because Beelzebul was the pagan god of Israel's mortal enemies, the great Philistines, Goliath. But Jesus, he knows who he is. He knows where he's come from, and he's not confused. And he tells them, Satan cannot cast out Satan. He's not a devil doing the works of the devil. He's come to drive the devil out, to cast out the darkness forever and for everyone. But what they fear most is Jesus' authority. People always fear great power when they don't understand where it's come from or what it's going to be used for. Remember, I said Jesus has already chosen the 12. That happened at the end of the previous chapter. And Jesus gave a mission to his disciples when he sent them out 2 by 2, cast out demons, cure the sick. Wherever you preach and they welcome you, stay with them. But if they reject your word, they're rejecting you. Shake the dust from your feet and move on to another town. Jesus will do the same thing. His own people reject him. They will not accept him. He'll go find someone else that will listen. And that's good for us because he then more broadly defines what it means to be part of his family. He said, whoever is my brother and my sister, my mother and my father, are those who hear God's word and those who do God's will. We can all be part of God's family if we're willing to live by those simple rules, to listen to God's word and to try to courageously fulfill his will no matter what it is. Maybe it's a cross, but one day it will become the crown. Jesus is the master class in doing the will of God. He knew from before he came to earth how it was all going to end, that he was going to be rejected and murdered by the very people he came to save, and he came anyway. He knew people were going to hate him. He loved them anyway. He knew people were going to make accusations like calling him Satan. He'd forgive them anyway. Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. If we want to know how to do the will of God, watch him at work. He shows us how to live and how to die. Jesus shows us how to love and how to forgive. Jesus shows us how to behave. Jesus shows us how to face temptation and not give in. He has taught us everything we need to know. All we have to do then is live it. Go out into this world where we face the same temptations that he did in the desert and know that he is not Satan doing the works of the devil. He's trying to deliver us from evil, to lead us not into temptation, to protect us from darkness, to bring us into the light. And so, my friends, we are all part of God's family. It's time for us to start acting like it in how we treat him, but more importantly, how we treat each other.